Hello and welcome to the Thursday Night Postgame show. A little bit delayed this time, so I guess after the App State game, we were like right immediate after, and now because of the Thursday and just schedules and everything, we're recording this on Sunday, so we both had a bit of time to breathe. Also going to talk about the win, because it's a 38-31 loss for Georgia State on Thursday night against South Alabama to drop to 1-7 on the year for football, and a 73-62 win for Georgia State men's basketball at Morehouse in their second of two exhibitions. So if you can't come here expecting all misery, there was a win to talk about, even if most of it's based on the box score hunting in the second half because the stream stopped working. But obviously, it's going to start with the football side of things. The main event, as it were, this week, national TV spot, the only college football, the only FBS game running on Thursday night on ESPN2.
And the NFL game was bad, so I'm sure there was a lot of other people who were tuning in.
And, hey, if you were tuning in just for, like, college football vibes on Thursday because it's the only game on, you got what you wanted because 35 points in the first quarter, like a bunch of yards. It was an exciting game there. Less exciting when all was said and done for Georgia State as they lose 38-31. As I mentioned, 35 points in the first quarter. 21 of those for South Alabama. Teams were trading big shots left and right, just defense incredibly optional. And then South Alabama's up 28-14 at halftime, and it really should have been more. They have a touchdown taken off the board due to a holding penalty, and then play down to the final play to kick a field goal and miss that field goal. And so Georgia State gets a real gift there going into halftime. Should have been down 3 scores. They aren't. They grab control of the game in the third quarter. They outgain the Jaguars 121 to -4 in the third quarter. Outscore them 3-0 in the period, but they scored on the first play of the fourth quarter, so kind of like an implied 10-0 advantage there as they grabbed the game in the third quarter. End up taking the lead for the first time, up 31-28 on a Grant Hollier touchdown and a DJ Murray 2-point conversion with about 10 minutes to play. But unable to close the game out. South Alabama drives down, ties the game with a field goal, 31-31. Rashad Amos fumbles on Georgia State's next possession. South Alabama takes over in plus territory, ends up punching it in the end zone with under 2 minutes to go. Georgia State lets them score, confirmed by Del McGee after the game, and so Georgia State has about 149, I think, to play with to go down and tie the game again. But drive kind of stalls out around midfield, and 4th and 5, do or die. Cameron Brown is intercepted as he's under duress trying to make a play happen there in the final moments of the game. So Georgia State falls. They will be bowlless again this year, second time in as many seasons under Del McGee. They're 1-7, 0-4 in Sun Belt play, so a guaranteed non-winning record in Sun Belt play, a guaranteed losing record at home as well. So, because they fall to 1-4 in home games, they only have one left on the schedule against Marshall in the middle of November. Just to kind of run through the stats here, let me get these pulled up for everyone who's watching this as well, just so you can see it if you don't want to just rely on my dulcet tones to kind of rattle through this stuff. South Alabama outgains Georgia State 468 to 440. That is 280 through the air, 188 on the ground for the Jaguars. Georgia State's 440 was a decent split. I think we can safely say, especially because it's the most points they scored against FBS opponent, their best offensive game this season. 241 through the air, all of those with Cameron Brown, who played the entire game, is the starting quarterback now. He's 19 of 33 with those 241, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception there right at the end. 199 rushing yards is a new season high. The incumbent or the oncoming star in this game was Jordan Simmons, a running back, who is 11 rushes, 78 yards, long of 15. Cameron Brown had 67 of the rushing yards along with him as kind of the two leaders in the clubhouse there. And I mean, Ted Hurst does what Ted Hurst does. Entering this next week, although with Texas State having played one less game, so Bo Sparks in second place, has only played 7 games, probably going to pass Ted as soon as next Tuesday, but as of right now, Ted Hurst is the leading receiver in the Sun Belt through this week. He has 110 yards, 2 touchdowns on 5 catches. DJ Murray, the other real playmaker in this one, gets a 52-yard touchdown in the first quarter. He's 3 catches, 54 yards out of the backfield. Grant Hollier, I mentioned, had the touchdown as well. 2 catches, 24 yards. It's him and Lane Waddle, I think, are filling in quite nicely for Camden Overton Howard, and something in the long run might benefit the team that that they are getting these reps as young guys. And then on the defensive side, kind of the one guy to shout out is a pretty struggle-filled night for the Georgia State defense. Kedrick Walker led the team with 9 tackles coming in for Kobe Owens at linebacker, and he also had 2.5 tackles for loss, with 1.5 of those being sacks. So that's kind of the story of the game. Very winnable. Certainly, once they took the lead, you kind of hoped they could salt this one away. It was not going to necessarily change the trajectory of the season that much, but as the story has been for a lot of these games, Georgia State's kind of done it to themselves. This is another one where, especially the poor start defensively and not playing well in those clutch moments late in the game, come back to cost Georgia State, and they will not make a bowl game. We'll have another losing season under Del McGee.
Yeah, I think that's back-to-back weeks. An incredibly late turnover by somebody who has not had an issue with turning the ball over has kind of sunk Georgia State.
Little fumble problem there. That didn't come out of nowhere with Rashad Amos. He's had starting to be an issue where it's like, especially with how Jordan Simmons played, maybe you can't play the guy who's got fumble issues.
Yeah, and it sucks because if you really look at this game was lost after Georgia State couldn't match that third South Alabama score in the first quarter. And now I know that seems a little bit crazy because I really think that the defense adjusted well. I know that you text offline saying, something to the effect of like, we fell for the defense again. And yeah, that could be a little true, but
I certainly did. This month has been a very discouraging month. And that was after they gave up 60 plus to 2 different teams in September. I thought that they turned a corner against James Madison. I was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, look at what Ole Miss is doing, right now. I don't know what games you were watching yesterday since Georgia State didn't play, but Ole Miss turned the heck up against Oklahoma yesterday. Like that is an offense that looks like it's going to be scoring on anybody. I know Vandy's kind of come back to earth a little bit, but this is still, an offense that I think is very good, led by a quarterback who is very good. So Georgia State giving up 60-something points in those games, that's kind of what it is. What is unfortunate for Georgia State is the 41 to App State, 41 to Georgia Southern, and then now 38 to South Alabama, where a better touchdown play and then the missed field goal, that doesn't happen, and you're looking at another game where the defense has given up 40 something points. And it sucks because in the App State game, definitely in the Georgia Southern game until the very end, and then in that James Madison game when the defense was playing well, the offense wasn't giving you enough. 20 points isn't enough. 24 points is barely not enough, but it's better. You finally got 31 here. You finally got a game where they went down. I mean, they were in some trouble. Georgia State had to actually snatch the momentum from another team, and for the first time this year, they did that. And so that's why I say that this game was lost after they couldn't match that score in the first quarter, because you weren't going to shut South Alabama out for the entire second half. That wasn't going to happen. And through the first 3-4 drives of the second half, it's not just that South Alabama, their offense stopped looking good. Georgia State was taking it to them on defense. And so it sucks because, I think after the fireworks of the first quarter, I feel like Georgia State showed us a lot of their capabilities. And it's unfortunate because it's so hard to give them the benefit of the doubt that I can't really sit here and do that thing where it's like, oh yeah, this was a moment to grow. This is a moment that you can take forward and, kind of look at it, when this kind of was emblematic of some of the issues that this team has had this year, and kind of going back to last year. At least they didn't give up 100 yards and penalties, I guess.
Yeah, but then you look at that, and the 2 penalties they had were 2 more pre-snap false starts. One of them down by the red zone. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to. It felt a bit like the UConn game last year, where they were very much playing themselves out of it on the road, and then they fought back. But then it's like, well, if you had just not dug yourself into this hole, the work you put in the second half might have meant a lot more, and you might have been able to get a win. And I said something to this effect through the live thread on Panther Talk as I was live blogging the game of like, this comeback, like the fight back is certainly something, but you need the win just based on the context of the season. Like it wasn't enough at this point to show the fight. You need to be able to make those plays down the stretch and make it count. Got the comparison chart up there now on the screen where first half was 351 to 219 total yards in favor of South Alabama. So kind of what you're speaking to. It really was. It was a little bit more even than that, I think, just offensively, like the offensive performance. Like I thought Georgia State had a good offensive performance in the first half. The first drive, the bad omen, TJ Payton fumbles the first kick out of bounds at the 2. Like the offense didn't do anything on that drive, but they were backed up. It was a weird spot. Like first play was just like running it just so they could get out from underneath their own end zone. The next drive, they had a touchdown to Ted Hurst on linebacker on Ted Hurst over the middle is not a great matchup. I'm not a defensive coordinator. I feel strong enough in that take as a watching football. Not exactly what you want.
There wasn't even really help either. Like that guy his responsibility was just, hey, nothing passed me. But like in the essence of like bracketing, that was not help, and that's why it ended up being the touchdown. I thought the linebacker actually played some. Ted was open because he's going to be open, but I thought the coverage wasn't bad. But like the angles were so bad that's what led to Ted being able to find a way to get to the end zone.
And then they match it the next drive. I mentioned the screen to Murray. I mean, we should say this. Both of those, good play designs by Hugh Jackson. He got into his bag a bit in this game. I think he has worn a lot of the criticism, I think just because of his past and people know his name. And it's like, oh, the guy who had led the winless Browns.
I think
for a team that is 1-7,
yeah.
Like, that is the part of the team that's getting better. Like, clearly, visibly, you look at the stats, look at everything, like, the offense has been improving. And yes, it is in no small part to just deciding Cameron Brown as the starter and letting him roll and building the offense around him. But, Hugh Jackson deserves some credit in producing that and scheming up some stuff in this game. I think the issue you looked at this team offensively is you weren't scheming anything. You weren't getting these big chunk plays, which a lot of times, if you're not just having your guy beat someone off the line, comes down to the play caller draw something up that gets the defense out of sync. You got that, I think, on both of these plays in the first half, the long touchdowns. So just, yes, great individual effort, both Ted catching it and then blocking downfield on the Murray touchdown. But it was also a nice job of getting a favorable matchup and setting guys up, and it was a nice fake off of some looks. The screen specifically was a really nice design because it played off of some looks they had already used a lot this season. You had Javon Robinson going out in the flat. 2 defenders run his way on the other side of the field, opens up space for DJ Murray down the near sideline. So I'm not absolving him because obviously it was his offense for the first half of the season as well, but what we're talking about right now is feeling like the team isn't getting all that much better, and I think that really is about the other 2 phases of the game because offense put up 31 in this game and moved the ball pretty consistently. They had a couple of bad drives, but the first one kind of put on the special teams, speaking to those other phases not getting stuff right. And you can't have to have your offense score every drive. Like in this game, that's what it felt like it needed to be, but you need the complementary aspect of the game where the defense and the special teams also give you something. And we didn't really see that except in the the third quarter, where the defense kind of did step up at that point. But you had already given up nearly a full game's worth of yardage in the first half before that happened.
Exactly. And I think I figured it out with the offense. Now that there's a quarterback that is being settled, like that issue has been settled. I don't say this because I'm trying to get on Jackson, but I kind of during the game had some flashbacks to some NFL stuff like conversations that I remember seeing about him years ago, and just kind of being an NFL fan and watching some of the teams he was the head coach for. I feel like his play calling has always been somewhat of an issue. And I don't know. I think he's the one that calls plays specifically for Georgia State.
Yes.
The opening drive of the third quarter was super emblematic of, kind of where this offense needs to improve. So they got a field goal. So obviously the result of the drive and the result of the play, they scored.
Why did you stop running the ball drive?
Yes. And it's not just, to me, why did they stop running? Because yes, the running was working, but how the running was working with the condensed field, I could understand them not wanting to only spam the run. That's fine. What I don't understand, though, is the running was working and they started doing passes that weren't working. So it's not just that they went off of what was working, but when a lot of the stuff that they were doing to the outside wasn't getting them a ton, and that's when they started attacking the middle with Hurst and some other guys. So it just didn't really make sense why they came off of running the ball, especially because USA's defense looked gashed. It wasn't just like, oh, okay. I know that's when I texted about the offensive line comment, but immediately after I started texting that, the offensive line went back to like the 2022 Georgia State offensive line, that where Sean Elliott's teams were just bullying people, and it actually looked like Georgia State was headed for like an App State arc or something like that. We have not seen Georgia State's offensive line look as good as they did on that drive, basically. So the decision to go from that to a bunch of, outside passes that really weren't working, and, a couple of it was just some bad quarterback touch. It wasn't like, oh, these are unplayable quarterback throws or anything like that. Like, guys just missed some plays. Okay. But the running was really working, and I really think they would have got a touchdown on that drive. They didn't lose by 3, so it ended up being fine. But, you get 6 there.
The game plays out differently if you get a touchdown there.
Absolutely. Absolutely does. Because, they would have probably gone for 2 again.
Yeah, and, you always have that Ted Hurst button. And, we saw it against Southern. It worked down by the goal line. You throw a fade to him. He's a very good athlete. He's great. I think it was Cameron Brown who said it this week when we talked to him in press conference. With those 50-50 balls with him, they're not really 50-50 balls. But the offense had been working in a way that it hadn't for most of the season, that you didn't need to rely on that. It's always a good break glass in case of situation, and especially with the added dimension of Cam as a runner. And even some of the design stuff, even just trying the touchdown run he got against Georgia Southern, where it's just a designed run to the right. I think you could have at least broken down the chunks to where the other issue with it is it was 3 incomplete passes, and so one of it, Cameron was a little bit low on the throw on 3rd down, that it could have maybe got to the situation. It was supposed to be a screen to Jordan Simmons, and you pick up some of the yardage. It was 4th and goal at the 8, so there was basically no decision but to kick. If you run it a couple of times and you still get stopped, but it's 4th and goal at the 3, you can talk yourself into just running a 2-point play there and just getting your best shot there on a short field. And maybe you still throw it in that situation, but they've scored in those spots this year. But I think going to it every time down by the goal line, when what had been working that drive, that whole third quarter really, was running the ball and getting Jordan Simmons going. I think that they maybe outsmarted themselves, and that is always the risk. You always hear about it with offensive play callers. There is that chess match that's going on, and sometimes you're switching to something to try and not get caught in tendencies, but I don't know if South Alabama was stopping those tendencies in that particular moment.
And it's what's really annoying about it too is I've talked about this for years at this point. I hate using timeouts to defend against delay of games, just from a resource standpoint. I think coaches are a little bit too liberal in protecting 5 yards, but there was a timeout used on that drive, and I thought it was a very, very good timeout because it was it felt like it was an inflection point in that game. They had started to move the ball a little bit on that drive, but there was some mix-ups and the play clock was a little bit low, and I thought it was a good timeout. you just can't take a second timeout on that drive if you are actually trying to get back down 2 scores. Like, you got to be a little bit efficient. And they were. Obviously, they kicked the field goal, but I thought the timeout was good. Later. It did, yes, because wasn't there a penalty right after the timeout as well?
Well, I think there was a false start out of the timeout. It didn't cost them on that drive, but as you're mounting this comeback, and not when you've done the comeback, but it's the final minutes of the game, after the fumble, when it's 31-31, South Alabama has the ball in plus territory, they have to make the decision to score there at the end because you only have one timeout. And so if you don't let them score, South Alabama can just run the clock down and kick a field goal as time expires or thereabouts and take the lead. So you force yourself into kind of one outcome at the end of the game because you had to burn 2 timeouts on offense at home because you couldn't get the plays set, which is a trend. It's been an issue. And so, like, I understand your general point about sometimes it's better. Sometimes it seemed to settle them in that moment, I guess, after the penalty, but it worked in that instance. But it does also speak to just the operation not firing on full go. And that's something that's been a continuing theme through now 19 games of Del McGee's tenure. And so the little things, like, this team is not good enough to avoid the little things costing them. And this was another game where that is what played out.
And again, it sucks because you like, again, objectively, great offensive game, truthfully. Like, I can even live with the turnover. Protect the ball. Amos seems to have a fumble problem. Yeah, but by and large, I think this was the first game in the Del McGee era where we saw the offense start well and then struggle and then actually still move the ball after that. So normally I would say there is a lot to take away from this, but like you're saying, they just don't get the benefit of the doubt because we've not seen them play clean football to where you say, okay, they'll just revert back to that. Because this quote-unquote bad is like the best that it's been, kind of.
Yeah, it should say, I'm still not 100% sure it was a fumble. I thought his knee was down before the ball came out, but because it was called a fumble live, it was going to take a real burden of proof to overturn it. And
yeah.
You obviously just can't let the officials have to you can't leave it up to them. You have to not fumble it or not lose possession of the ball at any point.
I think I could see that because of the way that the tackle was made, he was kind of laying on the guy, and so that blocked the view of the shin being down. I could see that being true, but yeah, I didn't think there was an angle that we could see on the broadcast that could have overturned it, which is unfortunate because that run, if he was down, it was a solid run. It would have said a second and short, third and short, or something, and it would have keeping the offense on the field there would have been really important. They probably win.
It didn't feel like South Alabama was going to get the stop they needed, and it was different once South Alabama goes up by 7. In the final 2 minutes, Georgia State has no timeouts. The script is pretty obvious, and South Alabama's edge guys just started teeing off on the tackles. Tackles did not have a good final drive, but you understand it in the sense of South Alabama knows what's coming, and they're just trying to get after the quarterback, and they were able to just affect multiple throws there. Obviously, the fourth down, Cam is literally got a guy wrapped around him as he's trying to throw it, and so that's why it sails right to the defender. But I don't know if that makes a sense to kind of put a pin in the offensive side of things, at least for now.
Just one final thing to the tackle point. Did Funchess ever come back in? Because I saw he got hurt, and
I don't believe. Okay. I'd have to go back and check the tape, but
because the tackles were playing fine before then, and then when he went out, they started playing terrible. So, which I understand.
I think they found their group.
Yeah,
Bailey still left tackle, and then Mason Cook at right tackle. On the balance of the full game, I think feels like the right group. Obviously, Donovan Funch, his health lingers in the conversation with that because he'd been playing left guard in this one, and the line been playing as good as it has all season. You finally have ended that mark where the Ole Miss is the largest rushing total, even if it's only by 8 yards. And
take it, absolutely take it.
This offense, if you've got Ted Hurst and you're throwing for 241 yards, everything near 200 on the ground is gravy. Everything past that is just they scored 31, and they left points out there. Like we talked about with the field goal that should have been a touchdown. this was not a story about the offense. And this is where it maybe makes sense to flip to the defense, because they had the 2 sacks. Kedrick Walker's tackle for loss right out of the 2-minute timeout in the second quarter was the first tackle for loss either team had. So certainly South Alabama's got a conversation too about like how their defense didn't play up to snuff. But Georgia State's got the same issues they've been dealing with. They can't get turnovers. They can't really, like, those 2 sacks outstanding. There weren't a ton of plays where they were affecting Bishop Davenport, and so he's 16 to 22, 280, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Also adds a rushing touchdown on the ground. He was just free and easy back there. Not a lot of pressure, even when they were bringing pressure.
10 for 10, I believe.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, 10 for 10. I think 10 for 10 for 202.
Yeah, sorry, not 10 for 10 for like 20. 10 for 10 for 202. Yeah.
So I went back and looked at it. The first touchdown to put them up 7-0. It's 3rd and 4, about like the inside the red zone, like the 14 maybe. They send 6, or maybe it was 5 with a spy on the quarterback. I couldn't really tell because the play didn't take that long to develop. But he's sitting back there despite that you sent over half your defense towards the quarterback. He has plenty of time. He throws the corner of the end zone. Bernard Kazi's in press and gets beaten. Receivers open. A theme there with press coverage. So South Alabama goes up, scores on their first possession. When you're sending that many people, it's going to make the secondary have a heck of a job, even if they don't get beat off the line. You need to get home if you're sending that much pressure. And I've talked on this pod before, like, it feels like the type of defense that needs to send extra people to get blitzes and to get sacks, affect the quarterback. Like, I think that's just kind of who it is. They don't have a guy up front who is able to just be a difference maker on his own. But when you do it, you got to do something to the quarterback, and that wasn't the case there. Flipping to later on the second touchdown, again, Deuce Walker was in press coverage in this one. There's a lot of times I think people go like, why aren't you playing closer to the receiver? They're giving him so much space. And the answer is, if you get press coverage and you just get beat from the line of scrimmage, you're chasing them the rest of the play. And like, when the rest of the play is a 70-yard field, you give up a long touchdown when you don't catch up. Safety takes a bad angle to the receiver, and then it's a 70-plus yard touchdown for Jeremy Scott. That one wasn't so much about the blitzing, because, I mean, that was a really quick pass, and just he beat his guy at the line of scrimmage. But there was a situation later on the 55-yard catch that set up the third touchdown for South Alabama. It was Devin Voisin, their best receiver, one of the best in the Sun Belt, matched up on Chandler Jordan, which is in itself a mismatch, and it looked like they were kind of confusion right before the snap. Guys weren't lined up 100%. They brought 6. No one got close to him. He had time to sit back and just chuck it downfield. Voisin was open. Rushing touchdown the next play. Like, it's the combination of everyone getting lined up right. When you're blitzing, you're not getting home. Just none of it was working in the first half. And I also had this. There were some injuries that piled up on that play where Deuce Walker got beat. He was hurt at the end of the play. He didn't return to the game. Bernard Kazi did leave the game in the first half, never came back. Shams John didn't play at all this game. He was in street clothes and warm-ups. He was on the availability report and just wasn't able to go.
So they were down 2 starters in the second half when they were playing some of their best defense?
Right. I mean, the thing is Kazi got beat on the first touchdown. The starters were still in on that second touchdown. There was something after the game Dell talked about as kind of a reason why they struggled. It was like there was new guys in, there was confusion. It's like maybe in the second 2 touchdown drives in the second quarter, or the first and second quarter, but the first 2 were all the starters, just not playing well. And so it's not a good reason. It's not an excuse, which unfortunately have tended to be a theme of these post games sometimes, where a lot of easy answers for stuff that wasn't the reason why things happened. I don't want to get on my soapbox on that, writing about it this week, at least in part, but starters didn't play well to start. And yeah, you lost them, and it should be kind of a problem that you lost all those guys and everything started to gel. And I don't think it's on them. Like I've talked about, like I think Bernard Kazi's been great this year. I think Jordan Huff has been one of the better players for this team over the first 6 and 7 games. Deuce Walker has certainly had moments that he's played well, and he's still a young guy, so you're kind of baking in that he's growing on the job bit of things. But it was early on. It was the starters in the secondary that were not winning in their assignments, and it was also they weren't winning up front. So just like out and out across the board, no one was doing their job on the defense. Is the reason why the defense did what it did.
Yeah, that's an interesting development. I am curious to see what the injury report next game looks like, and what the two deep looks like. Because I feel like I had mentally put a note to go back and look at that, but yeah, because after Walker went down, I thought, okay, maybe there are no good plays from this defense today, and then that was kind of when Kendrick Walker kind of took over a little bit. And I mean, hey,
who's again filling in for another injury. Kobe Owens goes down. Yeah. Who's already filling in for for Demaine Wilson. So
yeah,
like I am not saying there have been injuries. I'm just saying I don't think that was the reason why the defense played poorly in this game.
Yeah,
it had already started before the injuries started to pile up.
I agree.
But you did start playing, you had walk-on Tyson McCrary, son of Patriots great Fred McCrary, which I think we both learned on this Thursday night.
Hate that.
But he had an absolute thud of a tackle and punt coverage on the first punt of the game. Just perfectly timed it. But they were fighting hard. The thing with the third quarter was they just didn't let South Alabama convert a first down. And it was two really long offensive drives for Georgia State. One of them ended in the field goal. The second one ended in the quarter break, and they scored on the next play in the fourth quarter. It was just the first time we've really seen, that I can remember, just the absolute complementary, both sides of the ball doing exactly what they need to do. And then throwing the field goal as well. The special teams did their job in that quarter as well. It was just like the only complete quarter I can think of. And I guess fittingly for this team, because you had to score a touchdown in the first play of the fourth quarter, you did all of that in the quarter. You only won 3-0. Like, there is an argument to be made that, like, the quote good teams turn those type of quarters into 21-0 quarters. Something like what we saw at Statesboro on the other side of things. And so, if you want to make an argument, it's just like they weren't good enough, even though they couldn't have hardly been better if you just look at the numbers, especially defensively. But just more par for the course of just, even when this team has played at its best, it's not been enough. And they weren't able to take advantage of it because the biggest lead they end up getting is 3 points because they're battling back from so far. And spiritually, it felt like more than a 14-point deficit to begin with, just because it should have been 17 or 21 at the break. But that just goes back to getting yourself dug in a hole and not be able to get out of it.
Yeah, I don't know where we go from here. I'm going to be honest. I think after the first quarter, I had a pretty good idea of where we should go from here.
I will say, if it ended up being like a 49-17 final, it feels like it would be a lot more obvious what would be happening about this time. Like, It was heading towards a direction, especially you get that second touchdown for South Alabama on the big play. It's like, okay, so if this is how it's going, the fight back makes things more muddled, but here's what I'll say. Teams still could technically, and I say technically with not a grain of salt, like a whole scoopful of salt, could outperform last year's record. They can win 3 more and be 4-8, do better than last year, and that will dictionary definition be progress. Obviously, I don't project that right now. You haven't beat any FBS team this year, so predicting them to win 3 of the next 4 against them, especially when 2 of them are some of the better teams in the league, not really something you can look at as a real obvious chance. But that's kind of where the bar is now. It's like you're not making a bowl game. You've got to bye. You've got 15 days between games to kind of let it wash over you and get over it. But until that doesn't happen, that still is something you can point to as progress. But in the moment that doesn't happen, and they finish 2-10 or 1-11, it's really, or even if they just repeat at 3-9, it's really hard to look at this and feel like this is in any better place than it was when we're talking last year at the end of the season. And I just I can't imagine anyone involved Dell McGee included, is looking at this and thinking, yes, this is working well. Like, just, I don't know what the next couple months look like. I would be pretty surprised, as we're recording this on Sunday, if we are going to hear news today or tomorrow that there's been a firing, at least to the head coach. Maybe some staff changes come. Probably it's in Dell McGee's best interest to shake things up just for the sake of, yes, this is unacceptable to me as well, kind of messaging to the fan base. But I would not be surprised if, in whatever form it takes, there's a new head coach next year for Georgia State, whether it's there is a firing at the end of the season or whether Dell reads the tea leaves and decides he'd rather go back to Georgia or join the next staff at Auburn and be an ace recruiter for them. Work at his alma mater, kind of a nice poetic, the same thing Sean Elliott did when he left the job. I guess it's not his alma mater, but Sean Elliott spiritually a South Carolina guy.
I think I have to lower the bar because that was the third FBS opponent in the Dell McGee era that Georgia State has scored 30 points. This is the third. They did it twice last year in the 2 wins.
Oh yeah, the bar is. I'm just saying, like, that's the bar. That's what the bar needs to be, because it's like, if you're in year 2, you want to do better than year 1. Like, I don't think they're going to go 4-8 or 5-7. I did, especially given that they've now lost the main thing to still play for. Coastal and Marshall are winnable, but it's like, what is the team going to look like when they go out there, when they hit the road in Conway in 2 weeks? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll certainly see.
I guess a lot to digest there, and like I say, I don't think we'll get anything, but I don't rule it out over the longer term of the next couple of months, just because sometimes things don't work out the way you expect them to. And I think that anyone looking at this in an honest view, that's the assessment they would take away from this. Is just, I don't think we need to like retcon like a reason that this wasn't going to work from the beginning, because Charles Huff came basically the exact same path as Dell McGee into head coaching. Except he hadn't even been a head coach at the high school level, so he didn't have any of that experience before. He hadn't been a play caller. He had just been a running backs coach at places like Penn State and Alabama. Worked out for him at Marshall. Even before they won the Sun Belt title, they were making bowl games every year, and now he goes to Southern Miss and has them, along with Troy, kind of the front runners to win that division. Basically the same path. I think the difference was he was ready to be a head coach. And there's questions about Dell McGee's ability to be in that hot seat. There's a lot of adjustments to be made, and certainly questions to be asked about how well everything's been handled. It's a 4-15 team, and it's looked like it. I mean, arguably it's looked like it's worst. And the question that I saw someone pose online is like, what does this look like if they don't beat Vanderbilt last year? The only 2 FBS wins you've got.
I don't think he would be head coach of Georgia State right now. I don't think he would have coached last Thursday if they don't beat Vanderbilt. I think that has given, and correctly so, might I add. Like, I don't say this is like that's the only thing, but he was given some grace, and with the poor hiring situation. But yeah, I don't know that he's here right now if they don't beat Vanderbilt last year.
All of this seems, from the outside or whatever, might seem rash. And there's certainly people who's like, what is Georgia State? What expectations can they have based on their history? But, like, this is lower than the bar for Georgia State football, which doesn't have, you can't set, like, the standard is, like, impossibly high. There's certain programs out there that are mulling coaching decisions that they have won conference championships, or some of them in this sport have won national titles, and can look at it and say, this is not working out well. Calling Baton Rouge on that one. Georgia State's not there, but they can still look at this and say, what is 450? I got to do some quick math on the fly. You can say 21% win percentage is not good enough. And beating 2 FBS teams in 2 seasons, weirdly, and probably both of them, like, if you had just lined up and it's like, which of the 2 teams had Georgia State beaten, you would not have picked Texas State or Vanderbilt. And those are the ones they've got, and both of them is pretty heavy underdogs. So I don't know what to say about that, but you can keep updating the stats. I mean, I guess you didn't allow 40 in this one, so you don't continue to add to the number of games you've given up, 40 being more than wins, but That stat does still exist.
Christ.
And there's just a lot of lingering questions about just a lot of the freshmen you brought in. Like, the recruiting class was still an angle that down the line can bear fruit. The idea was you bring in a big group of freshmen, you do it the next year also, and you just keep building the depth that way. It's something that no one has successfully done at Georgia State, but if you look across this league, the best teams over the last decade have been the ones that have been able to build it out. Even, post-portal area, you still have a lot of teams. James Madison has a fair amount of guys that have come through their system and stayed there, and they're some of the better players on this team for them. That was always the hope, and I think it was maybe a misread or if someone was straight up saying because of the signing class they were going to win these games in 2025, that just was flat wrong. That was never the point. But you look at it now, and even if you bring in another good recruiting class, which currently the one they've got per 247 is not nearly what last year's was, you're questioning if this is the coaching staff that's going to put them in the position to succeed. You're questioning if they're going to stay. You're questioning the ability of the staff to get these guys to stay after another losing season, and like what Dell's message is to get a lot of guys to stay. And if you're talking about another situation where you're replacing maybe 2 or 3 of the coordinators, you're losing another big chunk of guys on this roster that now is almost entirely guys you recruited to this roster. Like, what is any reason for people to think year 3 is going to be any better? Especially because at the end of the day, some of the most basic stuff is just going wrong with this team. Special teams is still an issue. Game management, situational spots, still an issue. And I know they won the fourth quarter 14-10 this game. They are minus 127 scoring margin in the fourth quarter under Del McGee. And you can look at that and say also, like, they left opportunities out there to score more in this fourth quarter. So even though they won it, it's like there was still an opportunity to score more. It's just a team that has not looked good in the most important spots in games. It's not gone well. I guess I'm looking to just kind of fill time and add more things to say, but I don't know if there's anything that needed to be said. I mean, 42 minutes in, if you're still listening, you maybe didn't even need 2 minutes of this to get that message. So I guess I should just shut up at this point. You get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the turnaround. Like, I have a question at this point, and this isn't specifically a segue to the basketball game, but what turnaround would surprise you more at this point, Coach McGee or Coach Hayes? Because, like, neither is going in the direction that they should be. And that's just to match what the baseline expectation for Georgia State football and Georgia State basketball are at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Jonas.
Yeah.
Just because year 4 hasn't happened yet, so we don't know it's going to happen, and hope springs eternal. There's not a lot you can pin on with Georgia State football right now, because it's... Let's play it out. He stays, makes some changes on the coaching staff, whatever. Get some names in the transfer portal, make some additions. I will analyze this roster as I'm looking at it as best I can, and I will be honest of like, hey, this is a dude they brought in. Like, this on paper seems like a good fit. People aren't going to be buying that anymore. Like, it's been 2 years of that now. The product's been worse than it was before. It's like people are going to start tuning out anyone who is positively trying to spin this roster and say, look at what he's done, because through 2 years, it's been 2 years of not putting... Like, I think this is a better roster than last year on paper, but It's not been that way in reality. And so if you're doing it again next year, where it's like, this is the roster that everyone's going to come together, talent is half of the equation. The other part of it is coaching and development, and that part has been sorely lacking through a year and 8 games.
Yeah, I mean, what benefit to the doubt do we have to extend in March when we look at the roster and go position by position and, go through a 2-deep? Like, until they actually line up in August 2026, we're not going to have faith that they're actually going to be able to turn the good, talented players that they get into winning football games. I mean, they have not shown that they can do that.
And if they bring in a quarterback or two, we're still not going to know until next October who the starter is, just based on precedent. Like, there's a lot of this stuff that just keeps happening with this program that just feels like it just kind of is par for the course. It's just kind of what you get with the package. So Obviously, we will keep following it. If there is news to be broken, we'll be back sooner than we plan to be, and we'll talk about it on here on the podcast. But for now, I think we kind of said all we needed to in 45 minutes, so got our money's worth talking about this game. More to come. Not going to have a podcast on the bye week as of yet. Got something fun that I've teased on social media now. Got the Penny Hart interview coming up, which will be exciting. Share with you guys. I thought it was really good stuff from Penny. But when we return to our main podcast scheduling, we'll talk about the Coastal game. And we'll try and kind of find angles to keep talking about this team and see what we could learn over the lame duck of November, where you're not making a bowl game. But for now, we will leave that. We will flip over to a win in an exhibition against a D2 team. But hey, after 45 minutes, I'm sure you would much rather hear us talk about any form of win rather than what we just detailed and what we went through every bit of with the South Alabama game. Georgia State, 73-62 winners at Morehouse College on Friday night. Was not in attendance, and the live stream that they were running cut out after the first half, so I was relying on Dave Cohen, voice of the Panthers, for the second half. So only have the box score and that to go off of for a good chunk of the game, but what we can learn from this box score: Jelani Hamilton, good scorer of the basketball, 20 points to lead all scorers. He was 5 of 10, 3 of 4, 7 of 7 from the line. We saw Anthony Eno for the first time. He was a scratch in the UGA game, but he was able to go in this one. Played 19 minutes, got 11 rebounds, so that's a nice ratio. Micah Tucker, 12 points, 5-11 shooting, 1-1 from 3. The one part of the game I can speak to, they were up 17 in the first half. Morehouse really started chipping away, eventually cut it to 3. And over that time, neither Jelani Hamilton or Malachi Brown were on the floor. And it felt very much like in a real game, when half that run happens, he subs the starters back in and says, all right, let's go fix this. I think he wanted those guys that were out there to say, all right, you're in a road environment. This is going against you. Figure it out. And kind of didn't really do it, but he subs Jelani and Malachi in. They combined to make 3 threes at the end of the half to extend the lead back out to 10. And it was not probably as comfortable as Georgia State fans were hoping with the final score, but from that point, it was never really in doubt. And so, all that to say, they were still trying out different rotations. They could have let Jelani shoot more than 10 times, and I think he could have had a lot more points because they just didn't have someone who could stay in front of him. They were trying things. They wanted to get these guys to play different combinations, kind of gel. And so I'm not going to try and sell you on like this being a major, like big win. Even if they'd won by 30 or 40, I probably wouldn't have done that. But with all we've said about their 8-33 on the road under Jonas Hayes, this was a freebie on the house, and they learned. I would hope they learned a lot about themselves in this spot, and now they move forward. By the time we record next, they will start their opening season. They will start out their season at Eastern Michigan on the road. So if they win that one, and even if they like overcome some adversity in that spot, it could well be because they played this one.
Yeah, I'll try to sell you on 2 things because I'm a gifted salesman. That first half 3-point shooting was great. Looked good. That number is definitely not a number that we've seen too much out of Georgia State. And I know that they didn't hit one in the second half, so the total percentages don't look great. But they made 7 of them on fewer than 14 attempts. Really good from them there. And the other thing that I'll sell you on is, if you're looking at the screen, that largest lead. In the second half of games under Coach Hayes, we have not even gotten to the point where Georgia State can blow big leads. They're usually having to come back from big deficits in the first half of games. Yes, they have blown a couple, but the majority
not 21
of games,
points.
Yeah, the majority of their games has been, they're down 15-18 and have to kind of scrap their way back, and they'll end up losing by like 6, but they had an opportunity to cut it to tie it or cut it to 3 or something, and then just couldn't get the ball to continue to bounce like that. So I am at least kind of encouraged that they found a way to keep a lead from getting too close. But that's all I can really pull away from this. Exhibitions are tough sometimes, but it's good that they seem to have their legs underneath them, and you just really, really hope that carries over into the regular season.
I'm not sure why he's listed as a guard in this box score, but Christian Beam is, I really feel like one of the difference makers for like how good this team could be, because he's still figuring it out, and he's still figuring out how to play 7 feet tall, and you can kind of tell the coaching staff knows, because even just listening to the radio, even hearing Alan Payne talk about it after the game when he's asked about coaching him, it's like they know there's something they need to unlock there. And they know that if he can go up strong when he gets the ball under the hoop and go for a dunk and not worry about getting blocked or whatever he's worried about, it could be the type of scorer down low that this team needs to pair with guys like Jelani and Malachi on the perimeter. Clash Peters did not play in this game. The quote was away from the team for personal reasons from Coach Payne after the game, and I've sought some clarification on that and not heard back yet. But obviously something to monitor there. Not a particularly deep team in the front court as it is, so you obviously don't want that to be a long-term thing, but him and Beam will be important as far as setting the tone defensively and whoever can find something offensively. And like, I am not doing this based on this game, because D2 opponent, you really can't overread it, and 4 turnovers, not great for a point guard, especially not playing that many minutes, but I just am buying the makeup of Micah Tucker. Long term, more than like right now, I think he'd be a good backup to Malachi, and you're still hoping Malachi to kind of be the leader of the team in that regard, but I think as we've questioned the staff's ability to kind of ID freshmen, develop freshmen, I think they might have found the guy here. Because I think he is built for it. I think he wants it. And this is a game where you saw, in moments, that come across. And he's still got a lot to learn. You look at him, he's got to go through a college strength and conditioning program and just go bulk up for all the physicality he's going to face in college basketball. But over the long run, I think that they could have something there. And also, they haven't really had 2 point guards they really like on the same team. And so I think he'll play this year. There might be some mistakes you have to grow through, but you probably don't have to play Malachi Brown 35 minutes a game, and I think that's going to help him out as well. So something I'm monitoring as we get towards games that actually count, and against like competition. I mean, I really just want to see like competition, because you really can't gauge a team who lost by 4 to Georgia, top 50 KenPom team in the preseason, and a team who won by 11 at a D2. Like, those don't really line up. So I want to see the games when they count. I want to see them against other D1 teams, peers in the mid-major level, so I can really start to size up. I'm not going to just do like football is going bad, so I'm going to just sell you on basketball, because, again, speaking to what you said earlier, there's not much benefit of the doubt here with this Jonas Hayes era.
Speaking of staffs that don't have the benefit of the doubt.
But based on what I've seen so far, I at least feel like this is the team that is the essence of what he wants to put out on the basketball court. And I think the 3 points allowed in this one notwithstanding, I think this could be a good defensive team, better than like what they're projected to be, and that could make the difference. And it might be a case of winning more ugly than winning pretty, but really this era has shown you can't be too picky about how you get your wins. And so we'll get our first real assessment of that on Monday the 3rd at Eastern Michigan in Ypsilanti to start the regular season, which our next scheduled podcast will be after that takes place. And so no real preview from us on that, but it's also game 1 for both teams, so it would be a lot of vibes-based stuff anyway, so we're just going to see how the team play when they head up to Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the last few years have not been the best, but Georgia State basketball is back, so, at some point it'll return to what it had been, right? They had good years before Coach Hunter.
So I think, barring any immediate breaking stuff on Twitter as we are finishing up this podcast, there's nothing right now. This is going to do it for this episode, and this is going to be our last, I can't say enough times, our last scheduled podcast that we haven't already gotten the can. Mentioned it earlier. Hope you will check out my conversation with Penny Hart later in the week when I put that out. Thank you for listening to this episode. We will catch you next time, and we'll try and guide you as best we can through the wilderness of this November football season and the start of men's basketball, women's basketball, as they get their seasons rolling in the next couple weeks.